Hi, everybody. Welcome to the gathering room. I've been told you're already here, even if I can't see you. Ooh, does this have a spiritual connotation? Maybe it does. I am Martha Beck. Who the hell is Martha Beck? I am. And with me is my redoubtable second, Rowan Mingen. Hi, everyone. The gracious badger. Gracious badger living.
Who we got tonight? No one so far.
Nobody.
Hey, everyone's here. We've got Kathy. Aloha. Oh, good. It seems like everything's working again. We've got Rose.
Hi, Rose.
Hey, Heather. Hey, Linda. Hi, Alexa. Got a chunk.
You're coming in chunks. Donna's there. Yeah. Coming in. Don't see Wendy
Hey,
well.
Joy.
That's an
Hi, Lara. Happy birthday, darling.
happy birthday. Hi, Tiffany from New Zealand.
Yay. Oh, so many awesomes.
So good to see you all. Your tiny little photos popping up. Hello from the Sonoran Desert. Yes. And from Calgary. Your names, as Ro noted last week, the names just blow by and the places are like, oh my God.
Ohio. Oh boy, there's loads here. Hi. Tell them about little Jessie.
What?
Tell them about Jessie in Africa. Hi.
Oh yeah, our little friend who's probably much bigger by now. Little Jessica Grace Leyburn, daughter of Bronwyn Varty, niece of Boyd Varty, if you've read my stuff, and if you know of him. She was, when we were in Africa last year in June for the Star Retreats, we went out for evening. Can you imagine growing up like this? These little kids, Jessie and her big brother Jamie, they go out pretty much every evening into the African savannah in an open Land Rover, an open Jeep, and they call them bumbles, and they just drive through the wilderness, and there's a giraffe, and there's an elephant. Oh, there's a herd of elephants. And these little tiny kids are right up close with this wildlife from the beginnings of their lives. And Jessie was just at this stage when we were there where she only really knew a couple of words. And the one she knew as a salutation was, bye, bye, bye. So we'd go out for bumbles, and she'd be tiny little things standing up in your lap. You know, she was just about to walk. And she'd be just like a little soldier. And when we'd say, there's a giraffe, she'd go, bye, bye, bye. And there's an impala, bye, bye, bye. She saluted everything that moved. And you can see that passion for animals that, like, she can't even talk yet. She's obsessed with animals. How interesting is that? Those of us who are sort of born with this obsession with saving the world and the archetype of the shaman with the spirituality and the animal communication and the herbalism and the fascination with brain differences, all these things that I wrote about in Finding Your Way in a Wild New World, characteristic of medicine people in all cultures. We live in a culture with no medicine people, but didn't stop us from being born into the archetype. So I'm assuming most of y'all are, joining for that reason. If not, bye to the few people who joined because they thought, I don't know, it would be normal self-help. Anyway, today we are going to talk about the logic of magic. And this is something that comes up a lot for me because in my self-help, at first and in my memoir, which were the first things I published were memoir and then self-help and then memoir again. And I was experiencing a lot of mystical things. I was experiencing magical feeling things, miraculous feeling things. And my only real desire was to be free from suffering. So I was suffering a lot. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was miserable for any number of reasons. And I kept trying to feel better. And there were times when life just happened to me and it sort of cracked open my mind and allowed me to let go of certain beliefs that were causing suffering and let in other beliefs that did not cause suffering. And then magical things would happen to me. Then I started thinking, I think there's some method to this. So I started writing self-help. And I was just writing down the things that I'd done that made me feel better. But as people did those things, and as I kept doing those things, more magical or miraculous stuff would happen. So it got to the point where I'd written all the self-help I could without just flat out saying, this is going to be, we're going to talk about spirituality. And so I finally wrote my last book, a novel, complete fantasy, yes, except that pretty much everything in the book actually happened with slight exaggerations here and there. And people seem to resonate with this. A lot of people over the years have specifically come to talk to me about the magic, want the magic. And I was like, you sure you want it to be that woo-woo? And they'd be like, yeah, we want the woo, give us the woo-woo. And after a while, my own woo-woo experiences, here's the thing, I was still obsessed with just one thing, and that is, I don't want to suffer. I really don't like suffering. I know I've quoted Daffy Duck here before. Daffy Duck famously said, I'm not like other people. I can't stand pain. It hurts me. I am that Daffy Duck. I do not like to suffer. So I kept trying not to suffer. So these magical things, miraculous things would happen to me. And some of them really, really advanced my life. Like, you know, the magical way I got on the Oprah show. I was going skiing and I said, and they called me and said, do you want to talk to some producers from Oprah? And I said, well, okay, but I'm going skiing. I talked to a producer for like 45 minutes. And then she said, do you want to talk to me again tomorrow? And I said, no, I'm going skiing. What the heck? Because see, I love skiing. Skiing was like the best way out of suffering and into joy for me. So of course I was pleased about the Oprah show, but skiing, I'm not going to back off the skiing, because I've been using my own self-help, and I use this thing called the body compass, which is when something makes me feel joy in my body, I turn toward it and I do it. And if something else comes along and it doesn't feel as good, I choose the thing that feels better. This is the core of all the self-help I have ever taught. Skiing felt better. So later, I was skiing away, and somebody came out to the slope and gave me a phone and said, it's the Oprah show and they want to talk to you again. I was like, okay. And the producer said that she talked to, I think, 19 different people on the topic of de-stressing your life. And all the others had started sending in their resumes and their managers' opinions and life-size paper cutouts of themselves and gift baskets for Oprah or whatever, all trying to get on the show. I said, I can't talk to you, I'm going skiing. She said that was the only answer that hadn't sounded stressed. So they gave me a whole hour on the Oprah show, sight unseen. So stuff like that vaulted my career forward. People remember that stuff, and they were like, I want me some of that. And then there were things that were just flat out magic. And for example, still when I meditate, pretty much like 75% of the time, after about 20 minutes of just sitting with my eyes half closed, looking at nothing, watching my thoughts, everything starts to look quilted. It's the weirdest thing. And I'll like rub my eyes. I don't know if it's an optical illusion or what it is. It starts to look like it's quilted. And then it starts to look like the quilt has smaller partitions. And then it just becomes pixels, like a fuzzy computer screen. And then it just goes to bands of light. And this has happened. I thought it was happening because of the way the oak leaves were on the forest floor in California. Nope, still does it here in Pennsylvania. Still does it inside, still does it out, doesn't matter. So yeah, fancy visionary things. I have little visions of something. I had a vision of a beehive. Ooh, it was very, very interesting. Most of them, however, did not significantly reduce my suffering. And that, you guys, is all I'm interested in. In the end, it's what I'm interested in even more than I was interested in the Oprah show, really, truly. Even though I was very interested in the Oprah show, don't get me wrong, but I was more interested in not suffering. And I am interested in visionary things that like make me think, ooh, I think I understand the keys to creation. But I'm more interested in not suffering. So the book I'm writing now, and my current obsession for the last 4 or 5 years, has been this thing I call integrity cleansing. And that is just getting every untrue thought and every action based on an untrue thought out of my life. And how do I define untrue thought? First of all, I don't define it as any kind of religious thing, and I don't define it as scientific objective observation, because everything is ultimately subjective, and there is no observation without a subjective lens, right? Plus, if you follow quantum mechanics, you can't really observe matter down to the deepest detail without changing what's there because of the fact of observation. Okay, so all I want to do is know what's true, and truth I define as that which does not cause suffering. If something is false, it makes me suffer. And if something is true, it makes me free. And this is what I've realized after 30 years of this stuff. The feeling that I was talking about, the body compass, is the body going towards something that feels, that resonates with my sense of truth. And that's what took me out of Mormonism, and that's what took me off on all my wild adventures. And have I been immaculately, perfectly in integrity my whole life? No, there's still a ton of clutter in my head, most of it unquestioned, from cultural things, assumptions I've made after having bad experiences. But man, oh man, do I try to be scrupulous about anything that causes suffering, gets examined, and invariably broken apart. If it causes suffering,